because I felt like more and more people need the opportunity to access a different way of doing things. These guys, they essentially changed my life, because during that time with them, I recognized my own privilege. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have said that I had privilege. I would have said, we're all the same, grew up in the same way, got involved in stuff, and when you're ready, you can just leave. But I realized I was able to leave because of the support system that I had, the family network, the positive role models that I went to go and meet, and people that could really pour into me and tell me that, Duro, you're better than this, you can do more. But a lot of those guys didn't have that. Some of them, their family members, their parents were involved in that life, so what do you expect? So I was kind of like that beacon of hope that someone could make it out, and make it out without any repercussions from their previous life.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and our guest this week is in the person of Mr. Duro Oye.
Oye, correct.
Oye, okay. Duro is the CEO and founder of 2020 Levels, or 2020 Change.
It was 2020 Change, now 2020 Levels.
Now 2020 Levels, yeah. A social enterprise, an award-winning social enterprise. And he has a fantastic story that he's going to be sharing with us today. Duro, welcome to Against All Odds.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And thanks for making this happen.
No worries at all.
Before this episode starts, I'd like to ask a big favor. Your subscription means a lot to us, because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favor, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
Duro, we'd like to start these conversations with a bit of background context, because I know you came over from Nigeria.
Correct.
And you ended up being dropped in Broadwater Farms.
Yeah.
And you had quite a bit of an interesting start from there, South London, and do you want to just share with our viewers a bit about your early days?
Sure.
And
Yeah, happy to share. So I came over from Nigeria at the age of 5, and I was with my eldest sister in Broadwater Farm. We lived a relatively comfortable life in Nigeria, so you can imagine waking up in Broadwater Farm, got a rude awakening as to what my life has become. And similar to a lot of people, young people getting sent back to Nigeria, my story getting sent to the UK was an interesting one, because I was told it was on holiday. Until the 6 weeks went by and I was still here. So it was a bit of a rude awakening, but as you do, you take it on the chin. I think my parents had foresight to know the direction in which Nigeria was going at the time, and they wanted me to have better opportunities, or access to better opportunities. But I don't know whether they realized how bad things were in the UK also. So it was a council estate, and similar to a lot of council estates, it was actually a lot worse than most council estates. It's one of the worst council estates even till this day. I wasn't inspired by anything that I saw outside my window, wasn't really inspired by what I saw inside the confines of the flat that we were in either. My sister was a nurse, she worked night and day. She had a partner, she ended up marrying, he also wasn't really around. So I ended up kind of being raised by the TV and what was happening on the streets. Things changed for me in year 6 when another sister of mine moved me over to South London. And that's where things started to look a bit more on the up and up. Her partner, he was the only male role model that I had, and he was involved in a number of things that you shouldn't really be involved in. And as a result of that, I saw that, and I just kind of picked up on what he was doing and started doing it with a lot of my friends, and worked my way up the ranks through that. So I'd say from the age of 12 to the age of 21, I lived a very different life in the sense that I was involved, dabbled
in all sorts of things.
In all kinds of things that you shouldn't be dabbling in.
Right.
But I think it was all a path to get me to where I am today, exposing me to things that are done on that side that I could learn from and I could use as transferable skills to do a lot of what I'm doing now. And if I didn't have the past that I had, I wouldn't have been able to relate with the young people that I relate with in the way that I relate with them now. And Lord knows I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So in a weird way, I'm grateful for the experience that I had. If I could go back and do things differently, I definitely would. I'm not one of those that says that, I'm happy with the experience and I wouldn't change anything. There's a lot that I would change, and I'm hoping to change that with my work, hoping to change that with my family, hoping to change that with my son, and I'm glad that I'm on that path of change.
Great. And at university, you, actually, there's quite an interesting story about you going to university. Do you just want to share that with us?
Yeah, the university was not supposed to happen.
Because you had your own vision of...
I had my own plans, I had my own ambition, I had my own, thoughts of what I was going to become. Growing up the way that I did, I ended up developing a really vivid imagination as a way of escape from my reality. And that allowed me to kind of hone in my creativity skills. I fell in love with acting. I could use my experience and portray a different character. I could do so many different things at the time, and I thought the easiest and fastest way for me to pull myself up in terms of social mobility was through my creativity and the entertainment industry, acting, and all those kind of things. I got an A star in drama, and I thought I was all set, good to go. Speaking to agencies, people talking about getting me into West End shows. So I went home. At this point, my mum was now in the UK, so I was living with my mum. Everything was nice, and I had the awkward conversation about not wanting to go to university. And you would think that maybe I pulled out a knife and did a madness. The way she reacted, I was not expecting that reaction at all. In true African Nigerian mum fashion, she started screaming and wailing and saying no, that how could I do this to her, because it's her life, right? And her one ambition in life was that all of her kids would go to university and graduate, because she never had that opportunity. So my mum, I think I get a lot of my entrepreneurial kind of spirit from her. She's a grafter, hard worker. She's a tailor by trade, and ran her own shop, and that's how she was able to help develop the family, even bring us to the UK and do all of those kind of things. I got a lot of that from her. So her one ambition was that all of her kids go to university, have good jobs, and I'm the last of 6. So if I didn't, it's like, what are you doing? You ruined my plans. So she called a family meeting, believe it or not, to get all the aunties and the uncles to try and talk some sense into me.
Straighten you up.
Yeah. If only she knew. She had no idea all the other things that I was doing. That's the least of your problems. But I caved, and I decided to, honor her in that way, so she can have that picture of all of her kids graduating on top of the TV. That's what she wanted. So I said, I'll give that to her. Even selecting my course, I just thought, what's the easiest course that I could do? What's the one that's not too far away from London? And I decided to go to the University of Luton. Back then, it's now called Bedfordshire. Study graphics and advertising. And an interesting fact, I was one of the first in my area, part of my boys that were involved in what we were involved in, to actually go to university. So I kind of helped break the mold in that sense as well. And university was a turning point for me. It was the first time that I was away from my environment, first time I was away from my boys, first time I was away from what I was doing, even though I took that with me. But it was the first time I was able to just be alone with my thoughts and really reflect on the kind of life that I wanted for myself, the future that I wanted for myself, and how long could I continue on this path that I was on, without really dangerous repercussions. So by the time I finished uni, I decided, this is it. I feel like I've hit the ceiling of how far I can go in this, living this kind of lifestyle without getting hurt. And yeah, I know I make it sound like if it was an easy
Switch,
thing, but it wasn't. The instant reaction to say I'm done was easy, but then the journey to actually overcoming everything that comes along with that lifestyle took another 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
And I think my faith had a lot to do with overcoming that. I decided to take my faith seriously. I was always kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. If you grew up in a Nigerian household, by default you're a Christian, you go to church every Sunday, but it's not really in you, right? And I've come of age to actually realize that if I'm going to take this seriously, I need to take it seriously for myself. I know my mother's prayers protected me from all of the wrong things that I was doing, so I didn't end up falling too far down the spiral. So I thought, let me do this properly. I know that there's a God-given purpose in me. Let me try and find what that is and pursue that. And here we are.
Well, Duro, another thing that I believe I've heard you mention is the fact that you came up with this documentary. And it's quite interesting how you went about actually funding it and getting support for it and all that. And you must have obviously drawn on your skills from the street, to convince people to back you and all that. What was the story behind that?
Well, long story short, for the documentary, I worked within TV, and
this is post-university?
Post-university.
Okay.
Yeah. Started working in TV, worked my way up through the ranks there, and I was kind of looking for individuals that had groundbreaking stories, like transformative stories, people that have turned their lives around in the same way that I did. I don't think I was comfortable talking about my own personal journey at that point. And I was also looking for a way to kind of redeem myself from a lot of the wrong things that I've done. So I was looking for a really thought-provoking story that if young people that were in the position that I was in watched it would want to turn their lives around. And I was introduced to one of the guys in the original doc through a mutual friend. She said he's got an amazing story. I invited him in. We had an interview. He brought another friend along. And there's this thing that people say on the streets, that real recognize real. So when I was talking to them, asking them certain questions about what they do, how they do it, they were just looking at me thinking, like, you know a lot more than you were supposed to. Like, what's your story? So we had it was really a 30-minute interview, and we ended up staying in the studio for another 4 hours, just talking, chopping it up. And I didn't know that what I was doing there was kind of showing them the ropes and mentoring them. And we just kept that relationship going. And they had a rival gang who also were planning to turn their lives around, and they said that, would I be willing to invite them into the studio as well, so they can kind of talk about their change together on air. So I did. This station that I was working for at the time was a Christian TV station, and we got a load of backlash from the audience saying, these guys that you've got in there, I was in court with them, they got off for doing this to my family member and so on and so forth. And it was in that moment that I realized that this story was bigger than Christian TV network. We needed to get it out to the masses. So I left the TV station to pursue that. And I had a bit of money saved. I thought that would be enough. I was very ambitious and silly and naive, I'd say, because I ran out of money within the first 3 months. And it took 18 months to complete the full doc. So I needed to go out and raise money. I've never really done anything like this before, but I was deeply passionate. And I knew some people that had been following my journey that knew the kind of life that I was living before, and I knew that if I reached out to them to tell them what I was trying to do now, that they would, if not back me themselves, definitely introduce me to people that would back me. And that's what I did. I went out to my cousin's friend, and a few other church members, and we ended up raising $47,500 for the doc. We held a premiere at Odeon Leicester Square, and it was amazing. The aim was to release the doc so masses can see it and lives can be transformed. But we ended up having to pull the doc because one of the guys was really on his come up in the corporate world and was a bit too open in the dock, so we couldn't go out but it's a good thing that it was self-funded, otherwise my hands would have been tied. So I'm grateful that we were able to do that and protect him in that way, and he's doing amazingly well now, as are a large number of the guys in the dock as well. So that was the catalyst to what we're seeing now with 2020 levels, because I felt like more and more people need the opportunity to access a different way of doing things. These guys, they essentially changed my life, because during that time with them I recognized my own privilege. Ordinarily I wouldn't have said that I had privilege. I would have said, we're all the same, grew up in the same way, got involved in stuff, and when you're ready you can just leave. But I realized I was able to leave because of the support system that I had, the family network, the positive role models that I went to go and meet, and people that could really pour into me and tell me that, Duro, you're better than this, you could do more. But a lot of those guys didn't have that. Some of them, their family members, their parents were involved in that life, so what you expect? So I was kind of like that beacon of hope that someone could make it out, and make it out without any repercussions from their previous life. And I wanted to find out if there were more young people like the 6 in the dock that needed the kind of help and support that I gave to the guys in the dock. And here we are, 2,500 plus young people after.
Wow. Anyway, so just basically going back to what you just said about being able to come out, was there a backlash, initially when you took that decision not to continue with that kind of lifestyle? Was there a backlash from the guys that you used to hang out with?
Not for me. For a lot of people there usually is backlash, but I think at the level that I was functioning at, I was near enough top of the food chain, and I always did things by the book. I paid people when they needed to be paid and stuff, so I didn't owe anybody anything. And I was a leader in the mix, so I wasn't like a regular worker, in the sense that if I said I was out and I wasn't going to give up my connection or my link, and I'd encourage you guys to come out as well, nobody could say anything to me. They did laugh at me though. A lot of them did laugh at me. They said, the money's got to my head, that once the money runs out I'll be back. And I haven't looked back since. But there wasn't, I didn't face any backlash at all. In fact, I got some kudos years later from some of the older guys that they gave me like a nod of respect, that they wish that they could have done what I did when I did. Like a lot of people are out now, probably have maybe 3, maximum 4 people that are still involved in that life that I see from afar. But we were probably about 45 strong, 50 strong.
Oh, wow.
Majority of the guys are all on the straight and narrow now, family men, doing positive things, business owners, and everyone's kind of turned their back on that lifestyle, which is good. And I'm glad that, me taking that leap of faith at that time kind of inspired them that, it's possible for you to turn your back on that lifestyle and do something meaningful with your life.
Okay. What was the vision for 2020 change? Because I know it says 2020, but then you actually started like 2012, so way before then. And what was your first, experience of finding people to mentor? Because essentially, it's helping people to transition from this lifestyle through a mindset change and giving people opportunities and basically changing people's lived experiences and stuff like that. How was the first few,
iterations of it? I mean, it was all trial and error. There was minimal backing, minimal support, mainly because I didn't have the background to be doing what I embarked on doing. Studied graphics and advertising, so I'm a creative. What do I know about psychology and mindset shift and mentoring and youth work? Aside from youth work that I did in church, that was the only youth work that I knew. So I leaned into that, and I essentially used everything that I was learning, things that I used in transitioning myself, put it into workshops, and I did trial and error. You know, like designed the program, delivered it with a group of young people, asked them for feedback, changed it, and kept going. And that was it. So the first group was the guys in the documentary, and then the next group was so they told their friends, they brought friends on board, and then young people that I met through the church network as well. So I just kind of brought them on, and once it worked for them, they told their friends, and it continues to grow like that. Even till this day, our largest form of referrals comes through word of mouth. So it was very difficult. I was self-funded for the first 5 years. And I knew it was going to be a long slog, a difficult slog to get it to where I wanted it to get the financial backing. We tried grants. None of them were quite forthcoming. I didn't have the right infrastructure, the right systems and processes in place, the right governance. I was a one-man band, so I was way too risky to give any kind of substantial amount of money to. And I just took that as, okay, maybe this is a different path that I need to take in order to get this off the ground. And I looked at different models. I decided to go down the corporate sponsorship route. Okay. And everyone that I spoke to, advisors, mentors, said, oh, Duro, it's going to be difficult. Oh, Duro, you know, you're just starting out. You need about 10, 15, 20 years in the game before you get corporate sponsorship. I was like, cool, so if that's what it is, then so be it. I was willing to go 10 years self-funded until that time came. But I just knew that if I continued doing good work, making noise about the good work that we're doing, someone somewhere in one corporate office would see it and, you know, reach out and say, how can we support? And I was willing to start small and continue building. But our big break came in 2018. We had a double play spread go out in the Evening Standard, and the general manager of Converse, the training brand, picked up the paper and was like, this is what we're looking for, how can we support you? Okay. And yeah, we've just been building ever since. The year 2020 was significant for us. The murder of George Floyd, the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement enabled us to really get in front of big corporates that wanted to support. But I'd learned a lot from my relationship with Converse and other brands that supported us early on, that what we needed was long-term sustainable funding. So anytime I went into those meetings, that's what I asked for. And if they weren't willing to do that, I said, it's okay, we just kept it moving. So yeah, I've learned a lot in terms of building corporate relationships over the years, and it's served us well. So when people hear about our organisation, automatically, because of the events of 2020, they think that we started in 2020. I always tell them 2020 is about perfect vision. You know, so hindsight is always 2020. So taking my own experience, thinking about everything that I know now, if I could go back and share that knowledge with a younger generation, they'll make more smarter choices and decisions about their futures.
That's very interesting. So one of the things I've also heard you talk about is the fact that for a lot of these guys who found themselves in the street with no role models and all that, and had to get involved in all kinds of stuff, they're quite skilled, they're quite knowledgeable, you know, in terms of sales and, you know, marketing, whatever it is. Can you just tell our viewers some of the transferable skills that you have seen help some of the people in your program who have successfully completed, you know, how those skills that they honed on the streets have kind of helped them in the new lived experience?
Absolutely. You know, this is one of my favorite topics to kind of talk about, because unless it's highlighted, people don't recognize it. And that goes to both sides of the spectrum. Employers don't recognize it, and more importantly, the young people don't recognize it. So what we do as an organization is hold up a mirror to the young person and say, do you know you have this, you know you have this, you know you have that, and you know you can apply it in all of these different ways. Some of those skills that you rightly mentioned are sales. You know, so you're already selling and you've done well at selling. You just need to change your product. So you understand sales, marketing, clientele, negotiation, you know, supply and demand, all of these things. It's just basic things, but unless someone tells you, you don't actually realize it. And then if you think about the confidence that a lot of these guys have, the charisma that they carry and that they possess, when honed in the right way, when polished and presented to an employer, they can put a lot of hiring managers to shame. I've seen a lot of our young people, kind of go toe to toe with hiring managers, telling them things about the company that they're recruiting for that the hiring managers didn't even know. And putting them on the back foot, saying, "Why should I come and work for you? Like, you pitch me," and they're not expecting that. Employers are not expecting that. Employers are not expecting our candidates to come with the level of confidence that they have, knowing the value that they can bring to the table. So if you can help a young person recognize this and show them how you've already been doing all of these things, you just need to do it in this environment. Let me teach you how to do it in this environment. Let me teach you how to navigate these spaces. All of these people that you're seeing in these boardrooms, in these spaces, they're there now, but it doesn't mean that you're less than them because you're just entering into the space. How can we help you understand how to have the right kind of conversations and show yourself in the best possible light? These are all things that we do on our program. And one thing I also like to mention is that we started off working with those that were involved in what I like to call street enterprise, teach them how to use those skills as transferable skills. But in doing that, we recognize there's a forgotten generation even embedded within that community. And that generation is a generation of young people that did all of the right things, that kept their head down, that they see trouble happening over there and just kept going to the library, did everything that your parents told you to do. But then I recognize that they're still at a disadvantage when it comes to employment. They're still at a disadvantage in jumping through hoops and barriers. And that's because they lack that social capital to turn that university degree into something meaningful. And that's the power of our programs at 2020 Levels. We show you how to use that qualification and turn it into something meaningful, and couple that with your lived experience as well, and make you stand out as a unique candidate to that employer, to the point where the employer says, "We're not leaving this room until you've accepted our offer." And we've seen that happen time and time
So,
again.
Duro, tell us about, just give us an example of one of your most remarkable stories of transformation. Just anyone, without mentioning names, or just give us an example.
There's lots to choose from. I just sitting here thinking, who's the best person to kind of highlight? I think a young man comes to mind, and he was in a really, really difficult place when he got a hold of our program. He was kicked out of his house, moved out of his house, living, with some of his boys, sleeping on the floor, scrolling on Instagram. Came across our program, and he was broken. And he came along, signed up to our program. He saw his friends graduating on our program in caps and gowns. He saw our sessions, saw the food that they were having. He was like, "Wait, I want to be there." So he came along on the program, did the program. We have an exercise called the videotape, where you introduce yourself as you would 5 years from now, but you're talking present tense. So he was in the process of doing that when he was getting several calls on his phone. And he finished the videotape, stepped outside, took the call, realized that his cousin had been stabbed and killed. And he was told by his friends and his boys that they need to go out and retaliate. But he's now, I think, 4 or 5 weeks into this 10-week program. And he was like, he made up his mind that he wanted a different life for himself. So he had a choice to make. He could leave the session, go out with the guys, or he could stay and fulfill the commitment that he made to himself. He decided to do the latter. He stayed, and it was better off for him. He lost his cousin. The boys went out, did whatever it is that they were going to do. A number of them are no longer here because of that night and other things that transpired. But he stayed with us ever since. He's now working for one of our major corporate sponsors. He's got a really senior role there. He's doing exceptionally well. One of our ambassadors, constantly talking about his story and his change and his transformation. So the one thing that I like to highlight is not just the fact that he's in a senior position with a big global corporate right now, but it's the mindset shift that happened as a result of the program. Him being on the program, him being able to change his complete circle of friends, being surrounded by other ambitious young people that want to make something for themselves. enabled him to make the right choice in that split moment. If he didn't, God knows where he'll be now. And now, you know, he's here, we're still talking about it until this day. He's still very much close to the organisation, and he's still very much bringing young people in because they know his story, they know where he was, and they can see where he is now.
How are you able to get into that mindset of the street enterprise people? Is that, I mean, obviously, having come through that path yourself, you probably understand, you know, the mindset a little bit, and they probably also identify with you, and then they can see what you're doing with your life, you know. But do you ever come across people who you can't get through?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, our program is designed for a specific subset of that community.
Right, okay.
And that subset is that group that want something better for themselves.
Okay.
So I like to describe it in stages. You have those that are excited by what's going on the streets. You know, they're excited by the hype and the glitz and the glamour of it. They've fallen into that trap of thinking that that's real life. And then you have those that have seen that side of it and realize actually that's not real life. And they start thinking about long term, thinking about what it is that they want for themselves, how they want to change things in terms of break certain cycles that they've seen in their family. And then you have those that are at the top of their game and realize actually this is it. It doesn't get any better than this. Like this wad of cash that I have under my bed, under my mattress, that's it. There's no assets. You know, you can't buy anything meaningful with it. It's just money that you can use to stunt. And those that want more than that. So when you really drill down into the mindset of someone that's involved in street enterprise, some of them might have gotten involved in it because they felt like they had no choice. Now that they're stuck, you know, they've become accustomed to a particular type of lifestyle and a certain amount of money coming in. They can't now start from the ground up in the sense that getting hourly paid job that's paying the minimum wage. When you calculate it, it doesn't make sense. And a lot of them, I remember initially they used to tell me, you want me to leave what I'm doing to go and get a job for £1,200 a month. And if you really think about it, the only reason that they think that that's the amount that you can get is everyone around them that has a 9-to-5 or a regular paying job only earns £1,200 a month. So when I can take that, I'm like, okay, if that's what you think, let me introduce you to someone that gets £1,200 a day. Automatically catches their attention because they're thinking, wait, you're telling me there's someone that earns £1,200 a day? I'm like, yeah, there's people that earn £1,200 an hour. And these aren't just, you know, figures and things that I'm plucking from the air. I then introduce them to someone and they tell them what they do. Then they tell them how long it took for them to get to that stage. Then they tell them the steps that they took. And then they can map out their own journey. And it's like, okay, you've been doing what you've been doing for X amount of years. This is where you are. If you look at the people that have gone ahead of you, they've been doing it for times 10 what you've been doing. They're not earning £1,200 a day. So if you're wise, you'll take the changes that you need to do now. In 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you could be here. But at the same time, it's taking away that added pressure of constantly looking over your shoulder, not knowing, you know, whether you're going to make it back home at night. A lot of them, when you speak to them, they tell you, oh, I'm doing this for my family, I'm doing this to look after my child. I'm like, cool, that's great. But if you get caught, who's going to look after your family? Who's going to look after your child? You're not going to be there. So I'll tell you right now that your child would rather have you there than, you know, the Jordans that you buy them on Christmas. And you really look at how you're spending your money. You're not spending your money to look after your family members. You're spending it to, you know, buy designers and, you know, rent fast cars and all of that. Like, not saying you shouldn't enjoy yourself, but you've got to have priorities. You know, look after your family, look after your home, and then what's left over is what you can use to, you know, enjoy yourself and, you know, buy big boy toys and stuff like that. But it's tapping into that mindset of what's the end goal? Where are you really trying to get to? What's motivating you? Is it the money? Is it the freedom? Is it all of these things that you can't really get with the lifestyle that you're living now? Let me show you a way in which you can get it. I'm not just saying it because it's a nice to do, but I can give you 10 people in my phone that are currently living that lifestyle. And another way that I get them is, I'm like, how many millionaires do you know from doing a street enterprise? You can't really name any. Even if you do know them, you don't know them personally. You might have heard stories, but can you really prove it? And I can go through my phone and say, these are all people that I know, and they're either millionaires or they run £1 million companies. That could be you.
Right.
It's just that simple. So if you could really sit down and break it down to them in that way, it's very easy, but they have to be at that stage where they're ready to take on that information.
They should almost be looking to get out.
100%.
Yeah.
So we have a really strict process before that we use to sieve out people that are serious, because our program is pretty intensive. It's 60 hours
Oh, wow.
over 3 months. It's a big
And how many
commitment.
times a year does it run?
3 times a year.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 evenings a week for 6 months, for 3 months. And at the end of it, you get access to everything: opportunities, mentors, funding, whatever it is that you want. But we're oversubscribed, always oversubscribed for the program. So we have to be really strict about who we take on, because they have to be ready for that journey. So they have to be at that stage where they're ready to embark on this journey and make the most of it. Otherwise, you won't make it on.
How many people do you take on at a time?
So we have 2
And what's
flagship
your
programs.
constraints?
We have 2 flagship programs. We've got the I Am Change program and we've got the Levels Business Development program. I Am Change takes on 50 young people per cohort, and we run 3 cohorts. And then Levels takes 25, and we run 3 cohorts of that. So 75 each time.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have about 300 to 400 people apply each cohort.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, and the team do great work sifting through the applications, interviewing candidates, and giving feedback to those that didn't make it this time around, and encouraging them to reapply. We've had people apply like 4 times to get onto a program before getting on.
Wow.
But it's worth it.
It's worth it. Okay.
Definitely.
So did you ever envision yourself, if you cast your mind back, did you ever envision yourself being in this position of impact?
How far back are we going?
I'd say kind of like university years.
No.
Yeah.
University years, I was still finding myself. University years, I was still figuring out who I was, let alone what I wanted to do, right? I went to uni just to appease my mum. Coming out of uni, I wanted to get into film. I think I fell in love with film while I was at uni, so that was the plan. Not knowing that in working in film would lead me to this. And I really owe it to making my first documentary with those 6 guys. That was my road to Damascus type moment. I was like, okay, this is why I'm here. I don't know anyone that's in this space doing this kind of work in the way that I know that I can do it. And I really needed to bet on myself and this God-given gift that I have of being able to change the minds of people, young people, particularly this group of young people. And that's why I started. And the ambition was to turn around the lives of, I think, 450 young people. But change and impact is addictive. You change one life, you're like, wow. There's a feeling that it leaves you with that, just from speaking to someone, or your life experience can impact someone in such a way that changes the whole trajectory of their life. And you're just like, how much more lives can I impact in this way? And for me, it's more than just who I can impact. Now I'm thinking about who the young people that we've supported, who they can go on to impact. And I've always said about measuring the impact of our organisation is not really going to be done in the time that we have now. We need to really look at 15, 20 years, because then it's that generational impact that I'm really aiming for. The young people that we're supporting now, when they have kids of their own, what's the starting point that those kids are going to look like? We're seeing some of them now. Some of them are married, some of them having their own kids, and we're having conversations about their kids going to private schools, and the kind of environment and the places that they want to live so they can access good schools. And I just sit back sometimes and I'm like, this is it. What else could I be doing with my time here right now? This is really why I'm here, and I'm grateful to be in such a position to be able to offer the level of opportunities that we offer to young people. I was watching the pitches, the submission of the business pitches for our young people, and I was just like, they all want it so much, you know, like it means so much to them. And I'm like, the reason why I'm doing this is because I wish I had this when I was younger. And just that element of being able to offer this to them at the stage that they're at now, and then just going on to see what they will go on to become just from the exposure that they have. It's heartwarming. And I'd encourage everyone to do something to make the life of the next generation easier. And you don't have to start your own organization like I did, but you could support, you could mentor. You don't have to do it publicly either. You can give up your time and just support people in your local community. It's really easy, but it's so rewarding. So rewarding.
Allyship, because I know you haven't been able to do all of this on your own, and I know you've kind of touched on it briefly. But one of the things that I've also heard you talk about is the fact that on this journey you've built a very solid network of very well-connected people who are passionate about the work that you're doing and do not necessarily have any, they're so far removed from that environment, but somehow they're passionate about trying to make a difference in their own small way. Can you just tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Do you know, it's a really beautiful thing. And when you're in the thick of it, meaning that like if you come from where I came from, grew up in the way that I grew up, you think everyone's like you. You think everyone should know that you're struggling because everyone around you is struggling. But when you break out of that, you get to meet people that aren't struggling. Like they've never really struggled. They had their own struggles, but when you compare struggles, it's like, listen,
it's a better struggle.
I'll take your struggle over mine any day. And I think that really came to the fore for me during the uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement, the murder of George Floyd, speaking to a lot of senior execs, and them telling me that they didn't know that this was the experience of black people. And these are people that I've built relationships with. And then you have Black Twitter, Black LinkedIn, saying, how could you not know, da, 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 da. But then I was thinking about it, I was like, how would they know? Especially if you've never really been around black people that have struggled in this kind of way, right? When you talk about that senior exec level, there's, back then, starting to change now slowly, there's a certain level of black person that gets to that level, and their struggle is not the same as the regular black struggle. So if that's their circle of friends of black people that they're connected with, how would they know? So I then took it upon myself to start speaking and educating people. I don't mind, I can educate you, and I can tell you what it's like. And when you tap into that level of connection, it's like, to them it's like, what can I do? Now helping them recognize their own privilege. They might not have recognized it before. And I'm really good at helping people see where they are, where other people are, and how they can help kind of close that gap. And I see that as a huge part of what we do. I bring people into the space with our young people so they can see the caliber and the talent, the quality of young people that are coming through that don't even get the opportunities. So when we engage with a corporate partner, we host our sessions in their space, and I invite the exec team members to come in, just sit in on the sessions, get involved as well, and you'll see that these guys will challenge half of your staff. That's how we started placing young people into the companies, because their senior execs came in and they were like, I need this kind of talent in our business. Why are we not having this kind of talent? Then they bring in their HR manager, and their HR manager, the talent's not out there. What do you mean? It's in our conference room right now. So for me, building those strong allyship relationships has been a key factor to the success of our organization. Being able to demonstrate the value that our young people can add to any business. And when you're able to demonstrate that to people in key decision-making positions, they'll move heaven and earth to make it happen. A lot of what we're seeing in terms of backlash with D&I initiatives, mentoring initiatives, we're speaking to the wrong level of people. and you're trying to make a case to someone that still needs to go and take that case to make it to someone else, just cut out the middleman. Go to the person directly. It's harder. It's going to take longer for you to get into those networks where you can meet these people. But once you do, they get it. And they really want to make a difference. Where we're facing certain issues is we hit bottlenecks at middle management and all that kind of level where they try and just make things difficult. So I'm like, okay, it's no worries. I'll just go back above and we'll settle it that way. But allyship has been key. You know, every single one of our corporate partners and sponsors, they've been such amazing allies in driving change forward. And even some of those in the senior leadership teams, having us as an example of an organization that they can take to their executive team has also been a blessing as well. So I'm just grateful to each and every single one of them. And I can't stress the importance of strong allyship enough. It's so key to growth of any kind of initiative or organization like ours.
Okay. Duro, as we prepare to wrap up this conversation, there might be somebody who's watching who might be might be interested in supporting or helping or playing a part. How can they help?
There's a number of different ways in which people can help. I think for your audience in particular, I talked about everyone can do something. If it's mentoring, if it's guiding, if it's sharing your experience, sharing your career journey, even challenges that you face will benefit our young people. So reach out to us via our website, www.2020levels.org. We're on all social media platforms as well. There's a tab there about mentoring. There's a tab there about how you can support us. If you work for a company that would like to diversify their workforce, access top tier black talent, you could also reach out to us. And then for the younger audience members as well, who, if you're age under 30 and would like to sign up to one of our programs, you can also do that via our website or our social media channels. We're currently recruiting for the next cohort now, and I did mention it's quite competitive, so you need to make sure that your application's strong for you to make it through to the interview stage. If you're a young entrepreneur that has an idea that you're looking to launch, take to the next level, we support young entrepreneurs as well. We can give you access to business mentors, equity-free funding as well. So there's so many different opportunities out there, and I think for everyone that's listening to the sound of my voice, watching me right now, you'll know someone that could benefit from our program. So if you're part of the older generation, you might have kids, family members, cousins, nieces, nephews. We want to go as far and wide as possible with our reach. We're currently only London-based, so young people have to travel to us in central London. But the hope is to expand nationally in the coming years. So yeah, we'll hope to see you in a city where you are very soon.
Fantastic. Duro, I wish you all the very best. And we have a tradition on this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episode that they feature on to anyone or any group of people of their choice. So who would you like to dedicate today's episode to? And you can look at the camera for that.
That's an interesting one. I would like to dedicate this episode to... I've talked about allyship, and I think one of our strongest allies in this present season would be the team at American Express Global Business Travel. So I'd like to dedicate this to their president, Drew Crawley, their vice president, John Lyons, and the whole team at American Express, and especially all of our young people that are currently placed there. I think we have 7 now. So yeah, this podcast will be nicely dedicated to the global team at American Express Global Business Travel.
Fantastic. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Duro, it's been an absolute pleasure spending these past few minutes with you, and I look forward to seeing you in cities all across the United Kingdom and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.